driver has to head out the handle, also the drop back close and drive so the driver's in the front, three sides of the turret. You've got the driver and the driver down the front there to go the car to the right. Another car in the turret got the driver, the motor. Stamina to pick up the two-car navigation. Basically, you put the round in the barrel first, followed by a barrel of the as a track one, at the moment we're designing and putting into production a vehicle, a reconnaissance vehicle that's going to be called Ajax, and that's a track vehicle about 30 tons. So we're looking at the weight of a Sherman tank in World War II. Much bigger vehicle with lots of technology in it, new weapon systems, and again, as you can imagine, on the modern battlefield, a lot of electronic gadgetry going in that vehicle. The last vehicle in the column, that linked vehicle, on the front of the glacé plate is what looks like a square box. That's called a trim base. And the idea is, very little preparation, you can push that trim base forward and act as a sort of break the bowway as it goes through water. And a vehicle like that being able to cross inland rivers and lakes, you can imagine the enemy are not stupid. They're going to blow up bridges if they think an enemy's coming towards them. So having a reconnaissance vehicle that's amphibious can be really, really effective. And the lift, just by its tracks going around, would propel the vehicle through water at about 3 miles an hour. So you can get going across the river or lake. Of course, you never want to go on the open sea. First wave over the top, that would stick like a stone. Worth also pointing out as well with the track vehicles as they go past you. Many people, we've seen track vehicles, we've seen them on sometimes on earth movers, diggers, all sorts of things. The only wheel that is being powered by the engine on a track vehicle is the one with the teeth on. And that's biting into the engine, biting into the track and pulling the vehicle along that track. The other wheels are just taking the weight of the vehicle across the track. On most side of the vehicle, the idler wheel not standing in seat. So keep an eye on what one other great advantage of this plastic is it doesn't shatter or it is penetrating. The effect of a penetrating round inside are very different than it is inside a metal vehicle. And one thing you may notice in some of these armoured vehicles, they have what's called a small liner. That's a liner of a different material to try and absorb heat and impact from things that could penetrate the outer metal. One of the big problems armoured vehicles face is got a hot bit of metal inside, and that gets the ammunition in trouble. Famously, the Sherman in the Second World War, a lot of the fires were not to the factory. And if you look on the side of the turret to remind us it's not a T-54 tank, we've actually written 59 on the side. When the Chinese build a Russian copy, it's called a Type tank, so that's called a Type 59. And that particular tank is even weirder than some of the others we've got, because it was used by Royal Ordnance back in the 1980s. They fitted a British gun on that tank to see all the countries around the world that had bought the Type tank from China, and that was a lot of countries in the Middle East. Would they like to upgrade to the British L7105 gun? And that gun that was fitted, that was the gun that was on the Centurion. It was sold to the Germans for their investment. Followed by the T-72. Profile vehicle. They got rid of the motor in that tank to make the turret smaller. It's got an autoloader in it. It's like a cassette on a line up the gun, a ramrod will come forward and force the bridge. It's not only the improvement stuff. The problem of course is that go wrong, people amazingly survive better in that position than necessarily mechanical things sometimes. So it's a big risk putting auto-loaders into vehicles. So the Russians did it, fantastically effective, 125mm gun there. Not only could it fire rounds and tank rounds, but it could also fire missiles out at the end of that barrel. Drivers down the front, again, very low profile vehicle, caution bar suspension, and made in, again, vast numbers. 30,000 T-72s out there are going on around the world at the moment. For example, the Polish Army, a long ago, from Britain, and we've actually been taking this tank back up to Salisbury Plain, as sadly, with the world situation as it is at the moment, the British Army is learning all again about how to knock out tanks, because for the last decade, chargers, those little pops on the side of the turret, built up, again, clear, reposition yourself behind it. On that last go in the museum, you see the British Army Conqueror tank, and that had a very similar design with a separate cupola at the back of the massive turret. And the crews, when they were reported on these vehicles, they didn't like them because they couldn't see the commander. And one of the British Army soldiers get their training, and a lot of foreign armies send soldiers here as well to learn about that training, or actually do the training here at Bovington. So two classic British tanks of the Second World War. The Comet was sold on to a number of other countries that they're in service in Finland. Burma still had them in service into the 1980s. Very effective with a kit. And it wasn't just a Centurion there actually ended his life in army service, what they call an average armoured vehicle war engineer. It's a way of increasing our engineering assets by taking on redundant gun tanks. That had a big dozer blade was actually fitted to the front of the vehicle. We've taken it off, but you can still see the mounting points on the front. It's basically a Centurion hull with a whopping great superstructure on the top. We had Sherman bars for D-days, converted Sherman tanks. We've got the wreck of the one in one of our car parks. The idea being that they could pick up ground vehicles in the shallows as they're coming ashore on the landing, and also they could put the soldiers on front of the they could push back out and continue going off to pick up troops or more tanks and other landings. Bars were used, by the way, down in the Falklands. A couple of them went down there to the Falkland Islands. So Centurion is the main battle tank which you tend to have, or a bigger tank. In the British Army, some of the stewards, they took the turrets off the top because they liked the speed of the vehicle. They thought the firepower was almost insignificant, so why bother with it? Let's make ourselves faster. And they were called shorn-offs, and some of them whipped around the battlefield aggressively until the mother guns up. And they took the turrets off and used them to carry 17-pounder guns on anti-tank guns behind them. Now you'll be able to see some of these tanks in our battle scenario a bit later on. Two of the Germans driving around now, both 5 in the end. The very great to see over bring them along here today. can imagine, owning and maintaining a tank, it's not an easy business. Moving them around is quite hard work, very expensive, so we're very, as I said, the museum's grateful they've come down here. And also the owners, of course, have had that luxury and delight of being able to add lots of kit to all of their vehicles here, so they look stowed, a bit like our Fury tank does, that we've left all the kit on it that was used to make the tank look a late war version, being used by the Americans in Germany in early 45. That's how they did it up for the war movie, the Fury, and we've kept all that kit on it to make a bit of a contrast with some of the other vehicles in the museum. Many of the vehicles in the museum, some of them had a bit of a rough life, some of them been outside for a long time. Over time, we hope, especially with our new workshops that we're going to be building, we'll be putting those vehicles back, things that we've lost over the years. So we're just getting our off the track there. It's got, we think we've got a little bit of a trouble with the fuel system at the moment. It's right, inside the museum, by the way, normally this tank, we put it in the middle of a display on that Fury movie. The idea being we were trying to explain to the public, you can go and have a look there, why we decided to use this tank in the film, and also why we let the Tiger go up to the set for a couple of weeks. And really one of the reasons, certainly it earned a little bit of money for the museum, but certainly in terms of publicity, it was something we could never afford, the level of publicity we got from being involved in the film. And having Brad Pitt down here a few times didn't do us any harm either. So there is an exhibition on that inside the museum if you'd like to go and see it. Now, as our show lifts off at the moment, we've got another couple of it not only tells you about the history of the restoration, the history of how it was captured, but also why we run it and what we do with it, and the other surviving tigers. So do be careful, because with the tiger, of course, there's massive amounts of mythology out there, and there's a couple of books, one book purporting to tell the story of this tank, which is utter tosh. So please never buy that book. I don't even want to mention its name. So here's our Tiger 1 going around. It's painted again in the camouflage, the scheme that was used out in North Africa. Has some Typal air filters on the back. They were an air filtration system added to some of the vehicles that were going to North Africa to help filter out the sand and the dust before it got in the engine. We're going to park the tank there in front of the main part of the museum for the moment, because we're very lucky at the moment to be able to do a comparison that few can do, well, no one can do anywhere else in the world.